Joining us now, State Senator from Lynchburg, Republican Mark Peake. Senator, great to have you with us.
Thank you, John. Good morning. It's a beautiful morning in Lynchburg, and welcome back to the Commonwealth. I tell you, you're the new Ted Turner. You're buying stations all over the country.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we're working hard trying to ensure that we have a robust footprint and that we can continue trucking the truth across Virginia. Not easy to do these days, as you know, Senator.
Well, we're trying to get the message out, I tell you, and a lot of people are working hard to get the message out. It's tough when you don't have any of the major offices, and we've got to get to work so we can get our message out. But I tell you one thing, we're getting a message out right now about the crazy actions of the Virginia Parole Board, and they are just completely out of control. You go back to November of last year, they let out two murderers, Elizabeth Haysom and Jen Soring. Then you come up to this year, they let out a guy who beat a 91-year-old man to death with the butt of his pistol. Then they let out the man who shot a police officer in his face, emptied his gun into him, who's getting out today. And they were about to let out a man who killed a man in front of his two young children and his wife here in Lynchburg. It is out of control. I'll tell you, the Republican leadership just sent a letter to the governor about the guy who killed the police officer, Rob Bell and Mark Obenchain, former chair of the House and Senate courts, and then minority leaders Gilbert and Norman sent a great letter out that the guy who killed the police officer is supposed to get out and be released today. It's out of control.
Why are they doing this?
It makes no sense other than the Democrats have taken on this, I guess they call it criminal justice reform. You had Soros, who funded all the Commonwealth's attorneys in Northern Virginia who were running races promising not to prosecute crimes. Is it their part? Is it just their effort to get soft on crime? I do not know. Jen Soring one goes back to Tim Kaine. As he was leaving office, one of his midnight pardons was to pardon Jen Soring and send him back to Germany. Bob McDonnell came in, and with the help of Steve Newman from this area, they were able to stop that. But then come up now, and they've pardoned them. It's incredible. Not pardoned them. They've granted them parole and sent them home, sent them free. It makes no sense other than they just are showing a committed effort to be soft on crime.
What is the makeup of the parole board in Virginia, and how are they chosen?
I do not know the makeup. There are 5 people on the board, and they're chosen by the governor. So all of them are either Governor McAuliffe or Governor Northam appointees.
And these are the state parole board appointed by Governor Northam McAuliffe, and they're letting murderers out, just letting them out. Is it because their parole is up, or just explain the process?
Well, they're eligible for parole. So you become eligible, and of course George Allen, when he ran for governor, and then the General Assembly back then in the 90s, did away with parole. So current people have not been eligible for parole, but the new Democratic majority is talking about bringing back parole. So I would expect that to come up next year. And this year they passed a bill for geriatric parole. And unfortunately, for geriatrics starts at the age of 50 under the bill that they passed and the governor will sign in July. But going back to prior crimes, they had parole, and so they would come up. And under normal times, these murderers were constantly, no parole for you. You brutally killed somebody in premeditated, cold-blooded fashion. We're not letting you out. And now all of a sudden, the last year, 6 months, they're letting murderers out. And the one with the police officer, they didn't even have the family there to testify about the impact, the victims from the officer's family there to testify. And about the one that was in Lynchburg, Officer Smith, it was a Mr. Smith, 2 of his children, they were 5 and 7 at the time, became Lynchburg Police Department officers. One currently is. They were not going to allow them to testify. And that the gentleman is older at this point, and so they're trying to do it under the geriatric parole. But he had been denied in 2018. The parole board had a letter, sent it to the wife, said he's not eligible again until 2021. They did not even have it in the file at the parole office. And so they were going to do it now. And the family said they got notice that they said this guy's probably going to get out. I think it's 99% certainty they're going to release him. They said, what? We got a letter. He's not eligible till 2021. They had to find the letter. And had the wife not been such a great record keeper and sent it to the parole board, they agreed not to do it now. Of course, he is up for regular parole in December and then geriatric parole again in 2021. So you've got the police department, Senator Newman, the House delegates members, Walker, Byron, and Commonwealth's attorney, Bethany Harrison. We're all on this. The family's on this. So the parole board will be getting lots of information, and we've been promised that the family will be allowed to testify. But that was one. They were going to sneak it by, and due to their own poor record keeping, grant a murderer freedom. And we have got to pay attention. I'm glad that the Republican leadership has sent a letter to the governor. I hope we brought this, and of course, a bunch of us sent letters to the governor about the Lynchburg killing. So we're trying to get his attention. We're trying to get the message out. What they're doing is just crazy.
Senator Mark Peake, have you had any correspondence, any conversation with the governor, the governor's office, the attorney general? I mean, any of these people involved in this, Brian Moran, head of public security, have any of these people responded to you as to what the new policy is with just releasing criminals back on the street, murderers like this with this parole? I mean, what do they say when you have a conversation?
I have not had conversations. I sent this letter last week. I think we were notified on Wednesday. The family was notified on Wednesday that he was going to be released. They called me. They called Senator Newman. We sent letters on Thursday. I have not sent to the governor, to Attorney General, to Brian Moran, and the parole board, and I've not heard from any of them. I did send an email to the chairman of the parole board, and she, with my phone number, asked her to call me, and she did promptly call. So I have spoken to the new chairwoman of the parole board, and she said she is newly on the job, so the Roanoke murderer and the police officer killer were not on her watch. This new one is on her watch, but she said the paperwork would have occurred under the old parole board. So we've got her attention. I told her we want to be notified. The family has to be notified. The family wants to testify, and we want to know what's going on. She assured us that we will be. But as far as and I've got to quote the attorney, I think it was Attorney General Brian Moran is one of those two talking about the police officer murder being set free. He said, that was applauded the parole board for making those tough decisions. But there's no public statement out from either of them or the governor saying, hey, why are we letting somebody out who murdered a police officer? Why are we letting somebody out who was committing a string of home invasions, who beat a 91-year-old man to death with the butt of his pistol? Mm-hmm. Why are we setting these people? And that gentleman from Roanoke is 55 years old. He's very young. And they're sending them back out into society. And yeah, you can scour the papers, see what you see. I haven't seen nothing from the governor's office, attorney general's office, or public safety, homeland security about what the parole board is doing. It's very concerning.
I understand we have a trend, crimes not being prosecuted in Northern Virginia. We have very liberal prosecutors there and that nature. But this seems to just be a trend in Virginia of very soft on crime, not prosecuting certain people, not following up on things, and now just letting people out whenever they come up with parole. The reason you have a parole board is that there's subjective decisions. You get all the evidence and you try to make a decision, and if you get a majority, it'll let you out fine. But, when you got people beating up, killing people with the 91-year-olds and shooting cops in the face and emptying your barrel, I mean, how are these people getting released?
That's it. The mission is that they're not supposed to be dangerous to society and have, accepted or changed or whatever. These people have not even admitted that they committed the crimes. And the 55-year-old certainly is eligible to commit some more crimes. I'm 57. We're in pretty good health. We got a lot of years left, I hope. And there's also, you've got to pay for the crime you committed, and murdering someone, taking someone's family member away for the rest of their lives You can't just forget that. And
No.
so that's what's so shocking and what's so scary about and it's all part of the new Democrat. They're refocusing on the criminal issue. They want to make things not crimes anymore. It's criminal reform. Don't make people go to jail. It's all something else. It's psychological issues. It's socioeconomic issues. Forgetting the people who are victims of these horrible crimes. And if we don't pay attention, there are going to be more murderers let out. Now, these are not breaking and enterings. These are not robberies. These are not like the marijuana martyr, back when people were selling drugs and the jury would send somebody to sell marijuana to 20, 30 years. These are not those cases. And it's scary.
Horrible situation.
And,
Go ahead.
Very terrible situation. All kinds of that's what you have when you have 8 straight years of Democrats in charge, putting people on these boards, picking the parole board, picking these other bureaucratic leaders. And we've got to pay attention. And come 2021, we need to do something about it.
I tell you what, Senator Mark Peake with us, we're only at the beginning of some of the things you're going to see. John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America with Senator Mark Peake, Lynchburg, Republican. Senator, the governor is still really not knowing what we're going to do on May 15th. Maybe he's going to open some things, no restaurants, no bars, no this, no that, dictating that hair salons or barbers can't be walk-in, has to be appointment only, going to tell you how to run your business, shutting down Virginia Beach. But if you go to their website, you go to the VHHA website and you look at a map, there's a bunch of counties in Virginia that have had 0 deaths, and they have like 3 cases. Why aren't they open? Why are we doing this?
And it's and people have asked, and in a lot of the areas, especially areas I represent in further southwest Virginia, like you were talking about earlier, Bristol, Abingdon, we have almost no one in the hospital, very few cases. It's got to be done on a regional basis, just like the nationally. Mm-hmm. New York State and New York City is not the same as Bozeman, Montana, Wyoming, wherever it is, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. They're not the same, and you've got to treat them differently. And it's typical liberal democratic approach. We'll have one rule for everybody, no matter what. And it's just crazy, and we've got to do it differently in the states. If there are no outbreaks, if there are no problems, and you go into the rural areas that just don't come into contact with that many people, it's very easy to social distance in these places. Same thing with the barbershops. People can wait outside, keep their distance, come in one at a time. Hair salons, the same thing. Restaurants can do the same thing. They're doing it now on the takeout basis. So you've got to let people use some common sense. And I tell you, I went to a rally in Amherst on Saturday. People are ready to get back to work. People do not want to be dependent on government for their livelihood. And they like their freedom. They like their liberty. They want to keep the economy going. If he doesn't open up on May 15th into this phase 1, you're going to see some civil disobedience. People are going to start opening up without his consent. And then you'll see a lot of sheriffs have said they're not going to enforce those laws in the rural counties. We're not going to shut businesses down. People are trying to keep from going bankrupt. People are trying to feed their family. They don't want to count on the government, a check from the government for their mortgage, for their food, for their education. And I hope he's gotten the message, and I hope come Friday we enter into phase 1, and I hope very quickly. And I think people will be responsible. People know that it's a serious virus, that it does spread. I think they'll keep their distance, wear their mask when necessary.
Yeah, look, nobody wants to get the virus, okay? The virus is a nasty thing. My wife had it. It's nasty. She was in bed for 3 days, had to have chicken soup. I mean, it's a nasty thing. You don't want it. But under 70, the chances of you dying for it are basically, I have a bigger chance of being hit by an Amtrak train in Virginia Beach, and they don't have any here. So, come on. But look, I get it. It's nasty. You don't want it, but let people decide. It took me 2 days to get an answer from their chief of staff, Clark Mercer. Is my son's travel baseball team. They're 15, 16 years old, freshmen in high school, 2023. Can they have a baseball practice outside on Friday? Field is 3 acres, 12 kids on the team, 3 coaches, 15 people. All right? The gathering is 10, But define a gathering in what space? This is 3 acres, right? A baseball field is 3 acres.
Out.
Can they? So they finally got back to us. Much to I do compliment them. They finally got back to us. Took them a day, and said, "Okay, the stipulation is they can't share helmets." Okay, well, in today's baseball world, nobody does that. Everybody's got their own helmet. But I mean, think about where we are, right? I got to go to the chief of staff of the governor for 2 days to see if we get 15, 16-year-olds on a baseball field, which is 3 acres.
And that's you, John, who have contact and access to all of these people who are very involved in the political process. I'll tell you, going back into May, a good friend of mine helps run the Scott Robertson Golf Memorial Tournament, a huge nationwide event, one of the top junior events in the country. And they're trying to get an answer. They're calling the people, the officials in Roanoke. Can we have this golf tournament? Sure, there'll be more than 10 people, but they're all spread out. They're calling the governor. I'm sending emails. And nobody has any idea what's allowed, what's open, and people ask these particular questions, but there's no great clearinghouse to get a very quick answer. And if you're not plugged into the government, like most citizens are not, thankfully, they're out there working hard, not paying attention to politics, they don't know where to even go to get an answer. Mm-hmm. And it's just confusing. It's difficult for these folks, and they're losing their businesses. They're losing their livelihoods. And unfortunately, they're soon going to start losing their houses and cars and everything else if we don't get people back to work.
It's coming. I'm not sure what the governor thinks is going to happen to these shop owners and business owners and how they're going to, and you know, it starts rolling uphill, right? You don't pay your lease. The strip mall guy can't pay his mortgage. The bank forecloses. Everybody's in trouble. You know, then they sell it 50% on the dollar to the private equity firm that raises it because they just got $4 trillion from the Fed. Come on, man. The whole thing, it's like 2008 here, deja vu. Senator, I got to go. I want to thank you. Keep fighting this stuff that's going on with the parole board because you're the only one that's come forward and made this an issue, and nobody's paying attention to it. That's what happens when you have one of these things that are going on right now is a lot of things get slipped under the table because nobody's paying attention. So, Senator, thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for having us on. And other people have. A number of other senators, Senator Obenchain, Senator Bill DeSteph have raised it. They raised it at our meeting back in April to reconvene. People are talking about it, but it is hard for us to get our message out, to get on the regular statewide media. We're doing the best we can. We're talking about it. It's hard to get the coverage right now, but we're going to keep fighting and we're going to keep talking about it, and thank you for having us on.
Well, a lot of people talking about it, but it was, just so everybody knows, it was Senator Peake that called me up asking to get this word out, so you got it done. Thank you, Senator Peake. Thank you.
I will keep doing it. Thank you, John.